first of all, let's go to Bitcoin on 3 months. Obviously, there's not any weakness on this chart. If anything, if you look at the chart historically since 2022, you see after we have one red candle, we usually have two green candles. You can see the same thing happen here. One red candle, two green candles, and now we have a last 3 months we had a red candle, and now it should, if you're looking like this, it should lead to another green candle in this area, or even bigger, because you can see most of the times the first green candle after the red candle is actually the breakout move, and you can see here same exact thing. So there's a chance that that could repeat itself again, but let's actually start with swing levels and stuff like that. So right now, if we mark the swing levels on 3 months, we have the untested ones, this one. So let's put it like this, 3 months. We have this top swing that we might gain or not right now, and this level here is not formed yet, obviously, because this candle here didn't close. So we're not gonna put that one, because of course it can still turn red. It wouldn't be the most the nicest part, but it could always do that. So I'm not gonna mark it till end of next month. There's obviously these ones, but they're all tested and they're not really relevant to where the price is at right now. So let's go over to monthly. Obviously here on 3 months there isn't anything to go over apart from these swings, and that is looking very bullish. So let's go over. Yeah, 3 months has been honestly really good time frame for me for a lot of levels. It usually shows a really good reaction, because obviously 3 months isn't just 3 months on its own. Like if you mark this 3 months we had, it's also like a monthly level, obviously, because for 3 months to close, a monthly has to close too. And I feel like they're a lot stronger than the monthlies. I wish I could have like a really good example, maybe this one. Why it was a little bit relevant to, do you see this is the monthly and this is the 3 months. Do you see how bigger the relevance was of the bottom one than the top one? Yeah. So I think it's a really nice and relevant time frame to use. But that's the only time frame that I use that isn't like default, I guess. Some people like to use 12 hours, but I only like to do. Yeah, I do these on all of the altcoins, and Bitcoin I do these on all of the coins. But of course, like some of the newer altcoins don't really have that much history that you can find a lot of these levels. But yeah, if I see them, I'm obviously gonna mark them. So yeah, right now we have these two levels that are really relevant, at least somewhat relevant to the price. So let's go over to monthly. Monthly, now here is where it gets juicy. Like right now, obviously we had this bear market, and then this is where we started uptrending. From the low to higher high to higher low to higher high here to a higher low. Now we printed a higher high here. Now it looks like it printed a higher low here, even though I was looking for the tag of this 3 month slash monthly level. It looks like it printed a higher low here. So what do we look for here? Obviously the best long was to long run here. I was actually one of the few people who were actually longing around this price, because I saw the big picture. But let's not get too distracted with that. What do we see on monthly chart? On the monthly chart we see that the higher low is likely to be painted here, and it's looking for the next higher high. Right now, even though we got the new all-time high, I don't really classify this as a higher high. This looks more like a sweep, if we go to weekly, of these highs rather than a higher high play. So ideally, what do we want to see on monthly is a close above this level. Ideally we would like it to hold, maybe close, retest, and then higher. You wait for a structure shift, on 50 minutes, hourly, 4 hour, whatever is gonna be relevant to that price. Like right now, if you're gonna be playing for like a huge swing for all-time highs, it will make most sense on 4 hour if it does a new low. Like you can see, structure is downtrending from here. If it prints a new low, you wait for reaction, you wait for the flip of the last lower high, which would be this. If it goes straight to the level, you wait for the higher low, and then you long targeting new all-time highs. So that would be the play on monthly, what monthly is telling me. Let's see if we do have any more levels. These are what I call blocks. Basically, when you see, do you see how there's like two levels really close to each other? Well, I already have like 3 month level here, but you see how close they are, this monthly and this 3 month. Do you see how they are? How they are really close to each other? Basically, when I do that, I mark a rectangle box. Why do I do a box, rectangle box, instead of just two horizontal rays? Exactly because there's just a perfect example here, because of this wick. Sometimes when there's like two swing levels really close to each other, it bounces exactly from the middle, which you can see here. It gave a monthly a perfect retrace to these new lows, which is quite funny and happens a lot in price action. This, when you see really two levels really close to each other, you mark a box and it bounces exactly from the middle. How do you know where it's the exact middle? If you press on rectangle, you can put middle line on, and that's how you basically get the perfect middle. And you can see also that this level has been pretty important on daily. When we were moving to the upside, you can see that it was basically perfectly respecting the top of the box, bottom of the box, and middle of the box. You can see here it was kind of forming like some sort of a range, and also respecting the lows, which eventually, when we held, led to new highs. But yeah, let's go back to monthly. Obviously, the play here, let me remove the magnet tool. Obviously, the play here is to look for new highs if monthly closes above. But of course, if we go in the past, even when we claim the level, that necessarily doesn't mean we're instantly gonna go to upside. Like perfect example here, we closed above on monthly, it still led to new lows, but eventually like it didn't lead to new lows straight away. You can see it closed back below, retested it, then led to new lows. If we look at let's try to see another example. Here we had an initial retest, held, eventually closed below, retested back for resistance, and then yeah, eventually plummeted down. So that doesn't mean you should instantly look to form more longs. That just means you should be more biased towards upside than downside. That's the whole idea. And ideally, like, even if it just because this is gained doesn't mean it will go a dip below it. It just means that it's probably gonna hold above upside. But also, there's another possibility that it could wick back into this box, test it for support, and then reclimbed again, and then upside from here. So that's another scenario. So what monthly is telling me is either we wait for a reaction of here, and then upside from here. You wait for like a small time frame structure shift, for 1 hour or 4 hour, or it's gonna straight flush into this blue box, and then go to the upside again. Then you wait again, like you don't blindly long these levels. You wait for structure shift, and that's how you catch good longs. If it goes below here, this area, the blue box, then I wouldn't be necessarily as confident, because there isn't much levels. Yeah, if it comes to this weekly area, weekly level here, it will still be technically an uptrend, because for the uptrend to be lost, it will have to lose these lows, right? So it could go all the way down here. It's just wouldn't be necessarily as confident as if it would bounce from here, because it would retrace more than a like 50% ish of the move, which was from the last low. Like when you're looking at structure and it does this, like uptrend, downtrend, usually the higher low retraces around 50% of this move. And same here, 50% of this move, or here, 50% of this move, right? That's basically how structure works 90% of the time. Of course, there's gonna be anomalies where it doesn't work like that, but that's when you're looking to if you see it bounce it kind of out of nowhere, out of no levels. That's where you just look for the reclaims of the current levels, the levels which you lost, and yeah, you expect upside from here, from there. So yeah, what monthly is telling us basically, if it closes above here, you either wait for it to retest this monthly of the last all-time high push, and then low time frame structure shift, or wick into this box here, into 96, 97k area to 93.4, around this zone, and wick and then reclaim the monthly again. That would be the perfect scenario for all-time highs. Now let's look at weekly. Weekly obviously looks pretty good, but also it's really showing some weakness where it should be blowing off these wicks. Like, it shouldn't become, the price right now where it's at this area shouldn't become like one of the wicks. It should be just going straight through it, which is another red signal, which could show us like an example that's gonna maybe go for the higher low or even top around here. So that's not really the best scenario. And we can also see, if we mark, well, I'm not gonna mark this one because it's pretty much at the same price, but if you see this weekly from the first all-time high push swing, if you see, like, most of these swings have already been tested. No problem. If you look at most of these swings, they've already been tested. So if anything, weekly, when when you see these weeklies that have been previously good for resistance, now gained for support, you usually want to see it bounce from the first touch. You don't want to see it like wander around them too much, because the more test it does, the less juice is gonna be, the less limit orders, the less buyers are gonna be at that same area. Because, just pure example, if you, let's say, long here and now you're round tripped over here, like, you wouldn't trust the same level that held here 5 times for it to do the same exact bounce again. Of course, there's gonna be some scenarios like on Sol where there was a level. Let me go a little bit off topic here. If you go back to Sol and if you go on monthly, this level has been tested loads of times, you can see here, but you can see the impulse it created, this impulse from 123, this impulse created from here to here, which was a pretty big push. So it's not like a, how do you call it? Basically, it's like an important swing. Like, yeah, when you can compare them to like swings like this, where yeah, they provided a good bounce, like a 15-20% bounce, but this one led to 90% and new all-time lows. So there's a difference between the importance of this swing and, let's say, this swing. So that's why, like, this swing held even though it's been tested so much. So let's go back to Bitcoin. So yeah, weekly, it could hold here, but it wouldn't be ideal. If it holds here, you're waiting for it to flip structure on the 1 hour, or 1 hour and 4 hour. On the 1 hour it's already flipped. If we actually go, as you can see here, lower low, lower highs, lower low, lower highs, flipped here, and now it's looking a little bit toppy with those bearish candles right now. So if you wanted to bounce from here, exactly, you wanted to do something like this, give a good impulse, print a higher low, and then looking good for continuation. That's basically what you're looking for on 4 hour. But yet again, I think the likely scenario is we'll pull back a little bit lower to like around this area, because after it's gained again, it hasn't retested since, and it would be a good and a nice like place for a higher low here, because it would retrace around 50% of the move from the last lows, right? Of course, if it starts doing something like this, instantly breaks through the blue box, retest for a lower high, then lower, I wouldn't be as bullish, especially with all this liquidity here and liquidity here. But yeah, so basically what my plan is for Bitcoin is to wait for this blue box and then see reaction, or after monthly closes wait to see the reaction of this monthly that's just been gained. I'm not gonna go in depth on 4 hour, maybe daily. Daily looks good again until it loses these lows here. You can also draw a trend line just for some other purposes. We can see that it plummeted through it, liquidating this trend line longers, and now it looks like it's bearish retesting the weekly where it's at right now. So it could, I think it just goes lower from here unless it somehow holds this trend line, prints a higher low on hourly, and then continues to the upside, and then that's where we want to look into longs for continuation from exactly here. But yeah, daily looks good up until honestly these lows get lost. Then yeah, it's telling me that it's likely gonna go to the blue box we were originally discussing about on monthly and weekly. So let's look what topic we're gonna go next. SPX. Yeah, let's go over SPX. So SPX is actually like, I really like this chart. Let me remove all the drawings. SPX has been really interesting. While some people were flipping bear once we lost this low here, I was still kind of remaining bullish. Why? Because when I look at like structure, if I go to 3 months, we can see that this just still looks healthy, really healthy, right? Even when it was dipping here, this was looking pretty healthy. If you go to one month, like, and you look at the structure, higher high, higher low, like inside the already bigger picture trend, you can see higher high, higher low, and then the big expansion, and this just looked like another higher low push up until it lost this, right? Because after we made new highs, this was the new higher low. So I was still being really bullish, and it basically did what I was expecting it to do. It reclaimed everything that was lost really quickly, liquidated the people panic selling, and just mark around without them. But there's still things we need to be really careful about. Like right now, let's go to 3 months. There's a swing level here. Let's see some levels here, and potentially another level here, which was all untested, right? So now yeah, there's pretty much nothing to talk about. It still looks pretty bullish in 3 months. Let's now zoom in a little bit more. Now here, if it's gonna fail to reclaim new all-time highs and push higher, it's gonna be from here. Why, you may ask? Well, technically, if you look at weekly structure, this can all just be a big ass lower high retrace up until we start seeing closes above new highs, right? Because if you look at structure, a higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, then the trend was lost here. But this can all just be a new big lower high up until it loses this, because this is, I wouldn't really classify this or this as a lower high because it didn't print at least two candles. It didn't give me like a good idea of a structure that is telling me that it's a lower high. While if you look at daily, then here it looks a little bit more clearly that this is a lower high. If it turned out, but eventually broke above it and started to continue to the upside. So I think up until it reclaims basically all-time high, there's still a scenario that it could go to the downside. Obviously, right now, if we go to 4 hour, we rejected pretty hard 2 times of this monthly swing. But then there was some news about tariffs, about pausing or something about Europe tariffs, and eventually started going back up again. But still, if you look at daily, it has to hold this. Now this is the higher low on daily. And for continuation and for Bitcoin to continue going to the upside, it needs to hold this. Why, you may ask? Because if this breaks, daily structure is gonna break. And if that breaks, it's more likely that this SPX push, which we had from new lows, was just a big lower high on the weekly time frame. And another big scenario, if this low doesn't hold, because I now classify this low as a higher low, because it looks a lot more clear that this is a higher low rather than this, just one green wick that eventually like closed good. So why would you really consider this as a break of structure? So how I look at it, this is now the new higher low. And basically, the bullish scenario for SPX is to start claiming these highs, close above, retest, and then you look to long there, or it just continues only upping towards upside. So yeah, basically the whole idea is just the reclaim of those weeklies. For bear scenario though, we want to see it reject around there, around this price. We want to see this daily higher low lost, and after that it's gonna be looking pretty ugly, but it's still pretty recoverable. It can just do like a higher low inside of an already existing trend, like bounce somewhere around here and continue to the upside. But it would make more sense if it went back for the low again and start targeting the blue boxes here. And that would also be pretty bad because that would mean the monthly trend would have been lost, and that is a possible recession scenario, which is not really likely, but we have to prepare ourselves for that. Yeah, that's basically the whole idea. And also another concerning thing which I forgot to talk about on SPX is if we look at dailies, there's a gap here, there's a gap here. So there's 2 gaps that weren't filled towards downside, and if it goes for this gap, that means the higher low is being lost. And usually with these gaps, when they are formed, they usually 90% of the time they get filled eventually. And I don't really like that there's 2 gaps towards downside that didn't get filled. So that's another scenario that might be playing out for lower. Yeah, that's it about SPX that I have to talk about right now as a current. Let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin dominance. If we look at Bitcoin dominance when ETH pumped, it didn't necessarily do anything in terms of structure. And yeah, basically there's nothing really to fade about it. I don't think the alt season is coming anytime soon. I think it's just riding in an uptrend here slowly. If you look at it, it's not really taking any lows. If anything, it looks really good for upside. Let me just mute my phone. Yeah. So, like right here, looks pretty good, right? So nothing really to fade about it from here. Yeah, there's a potential that it could, from this higher low and daily swing, reject and then go lower, but I doubt. Like if you look at here, this was the, in my opinion, the best possible place, this block here, that it rejected from here and continue going lower. But if you look here, it actually rejected a few times. Here was the first touch, and here was the few more touches as well on the second try of the box, and eventually plummeted down a little bit, but it still held the daily structure. So no reason to be bearish here until it loses this. If it loses this on 4 hour and daily, then yeah, I will be looking for old season or something like that. But realistically, on Bitcoin dominance, you shouldn't be really focused on the next big alt season. You wait. The best thing you can do is honestly just long Bitcoin and short alt. Like, you wait for Bitcoin to hit your long setup, and eventually when it goes to like big support zones on Bitcoin dominance, you short alts for downside exposure. And most of the times, even though Bitcoin pumps, like, you're gonna be either break even or making money while Bitcoin is actually printing you money. So that's the honestly best thing you can do is like the current market conditions. Yeah, I'm not gonna really be talking about too much about Bitcoin dominance. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, nothing really to fade about it yet. So let's go over the next few things I was going to talk about, which is hype. Obviously, when I want to long alts, I look to long strong alts. I don't like to long, I don't know, coins like, let me try to find some weak ass alt, like coins, if you go to Woo on weekly, this looks like horse shit, right? So I'm not really gonna be looking to long coins like this. If I'm gonna be longing alts, I have a few bookmarked here, which I'm gonna be going over today. Which is first hype. You want to look to long these coins where charts look like these, because their structure is bullish. They show strength when they have to. There's no really reason to fade them apart from willing to risk money to try to nail pick or top, which 90% of the time never works. So yeah, let's go over hype. Let me delete everything. If we look at hype, it's pretty bullish. Weekly closed above new all-time highs, but now is retracing a bit because Bitcoin is retracing, and of course Bitcoin is king, and every coin follows Bitcoin. So what's my main idea? It's to look for retest of these weekly levels. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This weekly levels was from the all-time high swing, and this weekly level led to new lows. So they're both pretty important and are likely gonna give good bounces. We also, I think, have a trend line, which I use sometimes. They can be pretty useful, but I never based my trades solely off them. I just use them as an extra indicator that might either trap noob traders, or it might some sort, like here. Most of the time, how trend lines work, they punish people who long it right away, and then they liquidate them, and then they regain, and that's when it actually, you should be longing the trend line when it actually regains it. That's how like 90% of the time it works. So we have these important zones here. So, and like structure looks pretty good on weekly, obviously. If you look at daily, almost similar to Bitcoin, it looks good up until it loses these lows. So I don't think, honestly, with the hype being this strong right now, I don't think it will go for these lows. I think it will either wick a little bit below the level, and then you long the reclaim, or it's gonna like really fast flush into this bottom weekly long, and then you again look to reclaim and then long, or it could just front run everyone and just bounce from here. How do you play the bounce from here? If you look at the 4-hour structure, high, higher low, well, should have been a higher low, but eventually turned into lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, potential double bottom. And what do you look for to long from here? You wait for 4-hour trend to flip, hit some sort of resistance, maybe around here, retest the lower high it just gained, which is also a 4-hour level, right? And then you punt in along, and then you put your stop loss below here, because if it loses these lows again, that means the structure is breaking again, and you ideally target new highs. Maybe psychological level like $40, which was already taken actually. So maybe, honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if it goes to $50, which would be pretty good RR if you're long from here. So that's basically what I'm looking for in hype. Touch of this weekly, ideally I would want it there, because if I'm gonna be getting new all-time highs, I would much rather have an entry around here than here, because of course better profit the lower the price goes. But I wouldn't be mad if it gives this, as long as it holds the lows, right? So this is the hype setup, which I'm gonna be monitoring it for the next few days, and I might long it. So yeah, I don't really have nothing really to talk about other than that on hype. So yeah, on the, you either wait for, let me remove this trend line as well, and actually I'm gonna keep this thing. I wanted to either do something like this, and then you long the higher low, put the stop loss below the last low, target new all-time highs or whatever swings it gives. Obviously now we're gonna have this weekly swing, so this could be another potential TP target. So yeah, you can take partials at this weekly, which is also like new all-time high pretty much, or you can ride it for new all-time highs and look to TP as psychological numbers like 45, $50 and stuff like that. And if you drag it to $50 from $28 and put the stop loss, if the low is around here, that's 15 RR, which is insane. Of course, if you take partials at here, the RR is gonna lower, but that's the main idea what we're looking for. Or you can just buy spot around here, and if it goes to $50, that's an 80% gain, which is insane. Also, if you plan it to hold it that long, it's good to have spot exposure rather than only futures, because you don't have to pay for funding fees, opening position, closing position. You just kind of ride it out, holding the spot. So yeah, that's the thing on hype. It's one of my favorite setups, which I'm gonna be looking for. Let's go over next on Awe. Awe looks pretty good, but in comparison to other coins, I would honestly like it to just hold it right here, like right around this price, right around this price, because you can see there's a what do you call it, weekly block here, order block, which is holding it right now pretty perfectly. Also, there's a weekly tested swing over here, which was also holding the lows all the way from back here. So this is a pretty obvious good zone. And if you zoom in, it's been pretty good and they've been respecting this level pretty well. So that's the whole idea, to hold here. Why? Because if it goes below, I don't really have like an exact place to enter from, because this should have been a higher low here. And if it closes below, it loses daily structure. If it loses daily structure, there's not really much weekly levels that I want to long from, apart from like here. And here would be more of a stink bid than a continuation bid. And I don't really like going for stink bids. Why? Because I would rather much just along the strength instead of weakness. So ideally, if Bitcoin doesn't go lower, this is like the perfect altcoin you should long, because it's you have a pretty clear invalidation. You either put the stop loss below these lows or these lows, or you can have like a stop loss here, and if you get stopped out, you can look to long around here, and then validation below these lows. Where do you look to target? You look to target probably this weekly level, which is untested, and this monthly, and eventually if it gains that as well, probably new all-time highs. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. So yeah, Avis has been pretty strong, and if ETH starts catching up more bids, it should be pretty good. But I really want it to hold here. I don't want it to go lower. Inch, even though it doesn't really look as good as the other coins on higher time frame, as you can see on monthly, it's pretty clear an uptrend. It's been super volatile and nice to trade. Like, if the one long I was posting about the other day when it was here forming exhausted lows, I longed from around this price, and I got stopped down in profit eventually, but I called like an 80% move in 2 4-hour candles. This is why I like really Inch, because it's really volatile and you can catch pretty nice moves. And when Bitcoin is dumping, while the other coins were like losing most major trends, honestly Inch looks more like it's ranging rather than losing trends, and looks better for continuation towards upside than downside, if I'm being honest. And if you catch, like obviously here right now on 4-hour it's losing trends, but if you catch a good structure shift or a good regain level, it's a pretty nice long to target like $33, maybe around this price, $20. This is, if you catch a pretty good long here, this is where you're targeting basically. So this is another coin that I don't really have like a clear setup from here, but if it starts regaining the levels like this one here, if it starts regaining, I'm gonna be observing it a lot more and looking to catch the next big move for new highs. Because if you catch like move from this level to new highs, it's a 25% swing, which isn't like a small swing. That's a pretty big sum if you catch with nice size. So yeah, that's it on Inch. Farcoin. Farcoin. Let's go to Farcoin. Bitcoin. This level I've been waiting for so long to catch a long from. If you look at the Farcoin BTC chart, like once it started pushing to the upside, it never really gave a clear hard low. And this is where I'm looking at to do a hard low. As you can see, this swing obviously has been tested loads, but you can see that this level, look at the impulse it created. Like after this level was formed, it pushed to the top here. So it's a pretty good level, and it will make sense for a higher low. Let's look at the USDT chart. Pretty much same exact thing. Maybe there's a pretty much same exact swing level here, but I doubt it will go that low. I think it will go around here, like around this price, $90, and that's where you look to honestly long to new all-time highs, because if you look at weekly, there's no reason to fade this long. So what I'm looking for is like strong bounces around this zone, structure shift towards upside on like 4-hour. Maybe if this turns into a lower low, you're looking for it to touch here, regain, print a higher low, and then you look pretty much for all-time highs from here. Or not really all-time highs, but like this weekly swing, which is pretty much the 2x from where we would be longing from. And if it gains that, you can aim for new all-time highs as well. So that's another coin I'm monitoring in. This is another coin, ZRO, which again doesn't look necessarily that good on higher time frame, but the price action on daily and 4-hour have been really interesting to me, and they really remind me a lot about ETH when ETH was bottoming. Why do I say that? Let's mark the liquidity here, because if you see here, we had this liquidity here, which have been swept now on this downside move. But we don't only have downside liquidity, we also had upside liquidity, which wasn't taken yet. Let me use the ellipse tool. We also have all this liquidity here. And why does it remind me of ETH? Let's go to ETH BTC chart. it did really similar to price action to like ETH on the 4 hour, because if you look here when ETH was bottoming, it tagged the 3-month swing level here. That's where we bottomed. But after we first touched it, we didn't get an impulse right away. What we were doing is basically forming liquidity for upside move. As you can see here, it was all wicks, all tested levels. Basically, when you see like this slowly bleeding and forming a lot of wicks to the upside, that's where you kind of see that it's like airy. There isn't a lot of sellers in this area. Well, there's not going to be a lot of sellers in this area once it goes for it again. It will just shoot straight through it, which happened here. But you can also see that it also had downside liquidity here. Pretty much same exact thing. They were just ranging between this red ellipse and this bottom ellipse. But what did it do? Eventually, let me just get my brush tool. Swept the bottom liquidity, and then boom, shot straight through it, the top liquidity. And that price action looks to me a lot like this. We have top liquidity, we have bottom liquidity. Bottom liquidity has been swept. Now if I'm gonna be 100% transparent, I won't be, of course, longing this straight away, but I'm gonna be observing, and if it does something like this turns into a lower high, does a new low, I'm gonna be waiting for it to flip this long and then target the highs with having the stop loss below here, which would indicate we're shifting towards downside again. And I'm gonna be targeting to clear out these highs from here, which is gonna be pretty good RR as well. Yeah, I don't really have any more coins to go over, so I'm now gonna do a request which I had in my threads before I started streaming. I'm gonna do like a one example of how I enter trades. And basically, yeah, what's my whole analogy, how do I look for setups and stuff like that. Just give me a second. Yeah, let's do a back test so you can see like how I enter trades, what I look for in trades. Let's remove everything. Let's go to replay. Let's do random bar. And let's see if we have access to 15 minutes time frame. Yeah, we do. So what I first do is I start off with obviously higher time frame. I'm gonna mark this swing even though this one has been tested. I'm gonna mark this one too. I'm gonna mark a bottom one here. I'm not gonna really be talking about overstructure here on 3-month because it doesn't really have that much history. Obviously I can say this is now like a fail to push for all-time highs, and now it flipped bearish until it regains this, but I don't think there's enough history to me to go over market structure on 3 months. Let's actually just go to monthly instead. So monthly, we can see that the structure was looking pretty bearish, and this was when it was supposed to flip for a lower high and look for a lower low. Well, what it did, it printed out higher low and then broke structure here. So now we're looking pretty bullish. But what we need to be really careful is that it's approaching these zones. So basically, how do you know on market structure, in terms of market structure, when is it higher high or higher low gonna print? You know by these swing levels. Like obviously you see that the higher low was here now, and for you to know where the next higher high is gonna be, you have to mark swing levels where you expect big rejection. Like here, it would make more sense for it to print a higher high. Why? Because there's a 3-month and monthly level here. So that makes more sense for it to top around here. Same exact thing for a higher low. How do you know that it's gonna bottom here and make a higher low? You look for swings. So yeah, monthly, we see now structure looks good. And what I always do is I usually never fade the higher time frame structure. Yeah, sometimes I will fade it. I will look for scalps, but when you're fading higher time frame structure, you look to TP fast and aggressively because you don't want to get caught up in an underwater short or long because you faded the higher time frame structure. So right now it's looking pretty bullish, but it also looks like higher high is gonna be looking to maybe just top around here and then look for higher low around here and then long for new highs. So let me see if I have any more levels here. Let me delete this thing, this thing, this thing. I'm gonna mark a monthly swing here. I'm also gonna mark this monthly swing here that was gained but wasn't retested for support since. I'm gonna also mark this one right here because this is just a freshly new gain level if it closes like this, right? So monthly looking pretty bullish. Let's go over to weekly, pretty much same as I think. I don't really have nothing else to add. So let's go over to daily. Daily looks good, but we also see that there's kind of liquidity forming here, like it's slow riding. Like this isn't really for me. If I was looking at this, I wouldn't be as confident that it's gonna continue going to the upside when you see all of this liquidity. Yeah, it could go to the upside, but I think when I see price action like this, that it's eventually gonna sweep it and then look to bounce like around here. Because like I said on the ZRO and East chart, this is all pretty much air. So we're gonna mark that ellipse. But also we're not gonna fade the higher time frame structure. We're gonna be looking for the monthly retest. I'm not gonna be marking on daily swing levels. I'm gonna mark them when I eventually see a higher time frame opportunity to enter a trade. So let me put this on 10x, and we can see that it's pushing. It didn't tag the monthly yet, so I'm still not gonna be looking to long here. Now for daily to be bullish, I would and the weekly too, I would really like it to hold around this price. Sorry, like around this price. If it loses this, then it's probably gonna tell us that we're gonna go way lower, or maybe like this monthly here, or it's gonna sweep these lows and then yeah, go to the upside. But let's simulate. We don't know anything for certain yet. Yeah, eventually this is why we don't fade anything on the higher time frame. Eventually it tagged the monthly, and this is where it would make sense, right, to top around this price. I'm also not gonna be shorting here. Why? Because higher time frame is still telling us bullish, so no reason. I would much rather be a little bit more patient or look to longs on this monthly retest rather than get caught up on shorting the next big leg. So yeah, eventually does the big move. This just looks, I don't know, it just looks like it grabbed this liquidity and then went straight back up again. But still nothing to be really bullish about, because this can only just be again a new lower high up until it starts closing above the price. So I'm still gonna be fading it, fading this dip. I'm not gonna be buying yet. Now on 4 hour it has to hold like around here. There we go, we got the higher high push. But yeah, we saw that on weekly, but it's eventually gonna rug. Now we can see that there is even more liquidity now forming here. So let's mark that with ellipse. And let's continue simulating for an ideal setup. You see how the first time it touched it gave good impulses, and now the more time it touches this kind of liquidity side, it gives less and less nicer impulses. But yeah, it could still like bounce from here, because obviously monthly is still looking good. Well, now monthly, if you look at the candle, doesn't really necessarily look as bullish, because all of the upside move was 8. So now it's like more 50-50 rather than only up. So now we could potentially look for shorts, but I'm still gonna be playing extra careful to find like an A plus setup for a long. So let's just keep simulating. Looks like it wants to grab all this liquidity towards downside. Nice. Grab the liquidity from here, and now the ideal entry, it looks like a front run is monthly, maybe tagged on some different exchanges. This is the stuff I can't really do in backtesting. This monthly could have been tagged in like Bybit exchange, other exchanges, while on Binance it didn't tag. So that's where you look to see if it tagged on Bitstamp, Bybit, when it front runs a little bit like this. But ideally, let's look for it. Let's wait a little bit. We got our initial reaction, but we want to see some sort of a structure shift. So ideally, I'm gonna be looking now, since it looks like it's stopping around here. I'm just gonna simulate from here. I wanted to flip this, print a higher low, and then have my stops either below here or below here, and target new highs from there. So let's do that. Let's simulate. It did a move. Let's see if it's gonna give us a retest. Now here, it's a little bit more. Now here, it wouldn't really make sense for it to retest here, because it would retrace almost the whole move. Now you're looking for retraces to something that's a little bit more closer, like this daily. But I'm still gonna observe a little bit. Eventually did another higher high, but that doesn't really mean shit, because it just what do you call it, flipped on daily, and now we're gonna be looking on retest on daily to a long form. Let's look at weekly too. Looks pretty good. Yeah, everything looks pretty good, so I'm gonna be looking for long around these prices, because you can see here it's been pretty much respecting the uptrend. Every time it tried to look for a low, it just skyrocketed. So I'm gonna be looking for a retest around this area, around this order block. I'm gonna be putting my stop loss below this higher low and targeting new highs. So I'm gonna do that, and let's see if it hits. This is a little bit of not really my ideal setup, but I want you to guys to kind of show you something, at least somewhat what I look for in the trades. It's not like an ideal setup, but it looks like a good okay setup, like a B minus setup or a B setup. So let's see. Now it gave a good reaction, but ideally I wouldn't enter right away, because you can see now while 4 hour higher low is forming, 1 hour is still in a downtrend. So ideally what you want to look for is to flip this hourly, retest, and then long it. Nice. Basically didn't give a retest, but if flipped, just retesting now the box again. So let's simulate a little bit more. I'm not gonna enter still right away the trade, but the setup, this is the setup I'm looking for. yeah, right now it looks pretty good. That is gonna print new highs. So I'm gonna be longing from here. I'm gonna be putting my stop loss below here. And just look for new highs. That's basically the whole goal. Nice, good impulse. I'm not gonna trail my stop loss yet. Why? Because it didn't clear out those highs. I don't think it's gonna retrace yet. So I'm just gonna keep my stop loss like this. Nice, it's doing its move. There we go. Now we can trail a stop loss to here, which is 1 hour higher low. And we also take a little bit of profit on this monthly. Nice, tagged the monthly perfectly. Well, kind of front runner actually, so we haven't taken profit yet. We tagged the monthly here. We took some profits. Let's look at 4 hour. 4 hour, I'm still gonna be keeping probably the same stop loss. I could trail it all the way to here, which is the new hourly higher low, but I don't really like that because it could just go for the 4 hour higher low, a little bit lower, and then continue to the upside. Eventually even respects the hourly trend, tags the 3 month. This is where you probably look to TP most of the money and leave a runner, because how do you determine on what coins do you leave a runner, on which ones do you not? Yeah, a lot of patience on the entry too. I don't know if I could have waited that many candles. Yeah, that's the differences between a good, like an okay trader, and a great trader. Like, I don't give a fuck if market is not gonna give me a position in the next 2 weeks. I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna rather sit on my hands and do nothing than lose money. You always wait for the perfect setup and something you understand. Like, even here, this wasn't a perfect setup. I even would have waited like even longer and possibly could have even been sidelined. But I also know that once I catch the perfect setup, that it's not gonna like backfire on me. So why do we leave a runner? We leave a runner when high time frame bias is going in favor of us, and it could just continue going to the upside. Like, remember the monthly, we were talking about how it looks good for upside, and basically that's why you leave a runner, because higher time frame is still telling you to upside. Yeah, it could do a big retrace, but eventually the whole goal is to aim for upsides. So right now I would have been probably like 75% out, and you just leave a runner. And you just, what do when you leave a runner? Obviously just don't just randomly what do you call it, TP. You look to TP the next important levels. Well, we see now that it's gonna go straight through it at the top, but you wait for the big weekly swings, which would be like this, the monthly on the top, and you just trail your stop loss in the meantime. Like here, printed a 4 hour higher low, so I'm moving my stop loss here, securing profits, and now it printed a new higher high. Now you're moving the stop loss here. Now you're moving the stop loss here, and just continue riding the trend until you get stopped out. Now it looks like it's gonna print a higher low here, so I'm gonna put my stop loss here at these prices. It's holding. Nice. Now I'm moving my stop loss here. I'm still riding the original long, but obviously not with full size. You always look to lock in the profits most of the time. Now here, when you see aggressive moves like this is where you don't necessarily look to trail rather than just TP at level, because when aggressive moves like this, a liquid aggressive moves happen, it usually means that a big retrace might happen soon. Like catch all of the top longers, so I'm gonna be looking to TP at either of these levels, and potentially it will now retrace all the way back here. Well, this time it didn't. Well, let's see. I would have now moved my stop loss to here because this is now new 4-hour higher low. Let's see, we would have been stopped out. Still nothing. We're trailing now our stop loss to here, and eventually would have been stopped out here. So yeah, this is like an example of my trade, I guess. But yeah, like again, this looks really good on paper, but sometimes stuff like this are not gonna happen. Like Inch, for example, the other day when I longed, let me try to look for my setup. Basically, I longed around these prices, and I got already like stopped out. If you go to hourly, no, I think I longed from here. I'm pretty sure. I'm not really 100% sure, but I think I longed from around these prices, and I already got stopped out on my trailing stop loss here because it just ended up going back to my original stop loss, so I got stopped out in profit. So like when you trail your stop loss, that doesn't mean it's just gonna keep going up like this on Bitcoin on this example. But if the higher time frame bias is in favor of you,